Step into the captivating world of the Behind the Curtain podcast, where your dynamic hosts, John Dyer and Dr. Mohamed Saleh, bring together a wealth of 60 years of combined experience in healthcare and manufacturing. Join us every week as we delve into intriguing topics, weaving unscripted conversations that promise to take you on an unpredictable and enlightening journey. Gain valuable insights for your continuous improvement adventure as we navigate uncharted territories with enthusiasm and expertise. Welcome to a podcast that goes beyond the ordinary, unraveling the mysteries behind the curtain of knowledge.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Curtain. With me is John Dyer, and I'm Mohamed Saleh. And today we're going to kind of pick up where we left off from our last episode around psychological safety. But the area that I want to really focus on today and really dive deeper into is how do people enforce values and boundaries and hold people accountable that violate those boundaries? Because one of the things that we talked about in psychological safety is what happens when you see other individuals blaming or violating certain things that you're trying to put in place. What do you do about it? Because when you don't do anything about it, sometimes it appears that you're not serious. It's a flavor of the month, and there's no real hard accountability behind it. So, John, why don't you kind of lead us through this conversation, and hopefully we could land in a place where people could take this from us and go and actually know how to deal with those individuals.
Okay. Yeah. This is an important topic, right? Because it measures how serious you are in wanting to change the culture. Mm-hmm. If someone's not fitting into this new culture you're trying to create, and we're talking to the extreme here, let's say someone is belittling others or sexually harassing people or, pointing the finger of blame on people whose fault it wasn't, that something went wrong. What do you do? How do you address that? So fortunately, in my career, I've not had to fire too many folks, but one particular instance where someone did get fired, and it was justified. We were trying to change the culture. We had a particular department within a factory that was very poorly performing. And this particular engineer was the ultimate firefighter. He would be the one that, whose phone would ring when the process broke down. And he would go out and, without telling anybody what he was doing, he would go out and he would start adjusting things, turning knobs, switching this switch, switching that switch. And it might take 30 minutes, it might take 4 hours, but eventually the process would get back up and running. And he would be the hero. And everybody'd be patting him on the back and, wow, thank you, you're the savior. Well, this was happening on a daily basis. And nothing was getting better. In fact, it was getting worse. The process was breaking down more and more often. So I sat down with this individual, and I was fairly new in my role. And I was like, hey, we need to turn this around. And I think what we need to do is we need to start engaging the employees, and we need to start documenting what the process does and how to, make it better. And, let's do a process map. Let's do some, operational method sheets. Let's start, really defining what this all is all about. And he refused. He was like, no, I'm not going to do any of that. That's a waste of time. The employees are idiots. They don't know what they're doing. I'm the brains of the operation. They do what I tell them to do, and that's it. Well, I worked with this person for several months. I gave him every benefit of the doubt, and he just refused. Knowledge is power, and he held that knowledge close to his chest and wouldn't share it with anyone. So we had to let him go. And when we did let him go, the employees in the area actually were very afraid, because it was like, oh my gosh, he's the only one that knew how to run this thing. And now he's gone. We're doomed, So we ended up hiring a person who had all the right values, right? Had all the right behaviors. He had never worked in this particular operation before, but he had, an engineering background, so he knew how to solve problems, but he also knew how to work with people. And his first day on the job, I remember going out there with him and escorting, and he pulled all the operators together from this department. And he said, I have no idea what you do. I have no idea how this process works. I need you to teach me, and I will guarantee you that I will do everything I can to help you turn this process around and make it better. And the operators were floored. They were like, "Oh my goodness, this is an engineer, a white collar person coming out here and saying he doesn't know everything about everything."
Yeah.
Well, they started working with him. He actually worked on the line. He worked in, hanging parts and doing different things. He actually worked side by side with every one of those operators to learn every job. He started bringing in experts from the outside, people who supplied the materials, who supplied the equipment. And I tell you, within a year, that went from the worst operation in the plant to the best operation in the plant. And that never would have happened if we hadn't brought on someone with the right values and behaviors to fill that role.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a critical aspect, because if you hadn't done that and left the other person there, your efforts, regardless of how hard you try to change the culture, it wouldn't have gotten anywhere. I've had a few of those examples in my career, and it's really hard for leaders to take this step, because they fall into one of two categories. The more noticeable category is they're a high performer, they're the hero of the story, and then all of a sudden you're asking them to retire their cape.
Right.
And they start, there's this belief system that they have that they're the hero, and they don't want anyone else to be the hero. They find their identity in being the hero.
Right.
And so what you're trying to do becomes a threat to that. And so you see some ugly values start to surface, or behaviors start to surface, that might have not been there. They might have been there, when the culture was all like that, but now that you're trying to change the culture, there's a gap between what you're trying to do and how they're behaving. And you start seeing an ego surface, and you start seeing a lack of empathy, and you start seeing that there's no active listening going on. And a lot of times those people are easy to find, because when you walk in a room, they're usually one that talks the most. They're usually ones that talk over people, because in their belief system, they're a legend in their head.
Right.
And so, which makes it very hard to get rid of, because they're a high performer.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so
They probably got
like,
excellent marks on all of their performance reviews. And
exactly.
now think about what you just said, though. What that's saying is that if the process improves, they get diminished.
Yeah.
So actually, they have an incentive to keep the process broken,
Hmm.
because how else can you be the hero if the process is running smooth?
Right.
If every day you're able to come in and, wow, our quality is at 100% and our throughput is at 100% and we have no safety issues. And it's like, well, how can I be the hero if we don't have problems? Or if we are beginning to empower the team to deal with the problems real time, closest to the process, they don't need me anymore.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden there's a rebellion, and
Yeah.
it's like, hey, this whole lean continuous improvement, Six Sigma, whatever you want to call it, is a bunch of garbage. And I got to put a stop to it, because now my job is threatened.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a book I read, and I'm not going to get too much into it, called Tribal Leadership. And it talks about language, the language people use at different stages of tribes. And one of the things that I've learned over my career is when individuals that are high performers constantly use the word I rather than we, that should be a red flag. So if you're struggling to find these people in your organization, look at who talks the most, look who talks over people, look who doesn't take ideas from others that, enforces theirs, but also look at the ones that use I a lot. I did this. I want this. I expect this. Rather than we need to do this together. Like it's just a different mindset. But back to what you were saying, if these boundary violators are not held accountable, your entire effort is diminished. And so you as a leader, whoever in your organization, have to understand that, or have to maybe not the word understand, have to be intentional about promoting the right values to drive the right behaviors. The how you do it is just as important than what you do. And so if they're a high performer but don't demonstrate the values or don't use the right behaviors, there should be an accountability because those are dangerous. So that's the first type of person. The second type of person are the silent ones. And those also might be a high performer. They don't talk a lot in the room. They don't talk at all, actually. But they're the ones that are very negative about everything that you're doing and try to diminish everything that you're doing, or behind the scenes try to sabotage what you're doing. Those don't necessarily have power, but those are dealing with some type of trauma, of maybe this is the fourth wave of change, or they've tried to come up with ideas and got shut down. They used to be a high performer and then just got beat until they got and so there's something going on. And I feel like those are salvageable. However, those could really taint and sabotage everything that you're doing behind the scenes. And those are the dangerous ones because you don't know they're doing it. And so I would also, when people are very negative to what you do, that doesn't automatically put them in that category, but I would say pay attention to them, maybe teach them the purpose, go back to the original part of the first phase. Do they understand the purpose? Do they have pride in what they do? How do I engage them? Maybe I need to make them an advocate to say, we've tried this 3 times, you've seen it fail before, so why don't you help me get the team where we need to go? And sometimes we dismiss those people by they're naysayers or they're just always venting, but usually those people that are naysayers and venting, they actually care.
And they could become the champions.
Yeah.
If you treat it the right way. I've seen that happen multiple times where the most negative people ultimately became the best champions for the improvement. So think about, all right, what all needs to be put in place for this to happen. First thing is, and again, I don't think very many organizations do a very good job of this, or they do it in a way that is superficial, is define what are the values that you are looking for in people, right? If you're trying, we've talked the last or 2 episodes ago about the 4 different leadership styles and trying to get to empowerment, right? The collaborative empowerment teams of employees. Well, what are the values that are required to help make that happen and to help those employees grow and prosper? So first step is sitting down as a leadership team and defining what those values need to be to make the kind of culture that you're trying to create with this team-based continuous improvement. Second is then, actually, I've had some organizations do this. Once they define those values, they'll actually put them into the job descriptions.
Yeah.
So from that point forward, as you're hiring new people, those values are part of the job description to remind the people who are bringing in candidates that, hey, these are the kind of values that we're looking for. And they'll actually build questions into the interviewing process to try to highlight whether that person has those values or not. Now, sometimes they can fake it, right? They can, make stuff up. So one of the techniques that I have found very successful, and if that happens, if you've got a candidate that's kind of on the fence, you're like, I think their values meet ours. They're saying the right things, but do they really mean it? What we'll do is we would actually invite them to attend one of our training sessions, and you'd be amazed at how their true spots really come out when they're in a mix of other employees going through a half day or a day long training session. And you're like, oh my goodness, I'm sure glad we didn't hire this person, because they're not anything like what they said they were, or the opposite. Wow, this person's really shine through. So that's the key. And then once everybody knows what those values are, that should be part of the whatever coaching process your organization uses. If you're having a monthly sit down with every employee, kind of review with them, how are you doing on these values? Are there things you're struggling with? Is there something I can help you with? What kind of feedback are you getting from the people you're working with your supporter? So yeah, getting that information is part of the growing process. And then we have talked a little bit about, well, all right, let's say you have someone who's a high performer but are demonstrating bad values. What do you do with that person? So I'll turn it back over to you. So what would you do with someone who is ranked a high performer but not using the values that we've all agreed that need to be in place?
Yeah, that's a very tricky place to be in, and you're time limited to this individual. And so you have to kind of, at least what I do is I give this person a time frame, say 3 months, 12 weeks. And I try to identify exactly what's toxic about that individual. What values are they violating? What behaviors are they not demonstrating? And I have a sit down, and I try to have a weekly coaching session with that individual to highlight what are the expectations. We have to set expectations of, hey, these are the values and behaviors that I admire and I want to reinforce in this culture, and I need your help anchoring them. However, here's the consequences of violating them. And I won't say you're doing it, especially in the beginning. I was like, these are the things I'm going to be looking for, but there will be consequences for someone that violates them. And then I would let it go. Then on a weekly basis, I would look at, my daily Gemba walks around appreciation. And I have an intentional round as just for employee engagement for me to go out there and appreciate people. That's all I do. I look for the good things that people are doing. And I bring these recognitions to give it out in my huddle in the morning the next day. And I only promote the behavior I'm trying to change. So it's not like I'm not all over the place. If the behavior that I'm noticing is, I have individuals on my team that can't separate realities, or are judgmental versus curious, or are not actively listening to people, I will only recognize those that are doing it. And I would do that every single day, sometimes up to 4 weeks. But I'm sending a very clear message to that individual. This is how I am now valuing or appreciating it, this behavior or value on my team. And so, I used to have an issue with discretionary effort. People was like, this is not my job, I don't want to do it. And so I started only valuing discretionary effort because that shows caring. And so, and I would only, every single day, I would show appreciation towards that. And so people were like, well, I can't find, I can't recognize them for the things that they're supposed to do anyway. Yeah, but then you're not really doing the appreciation the right way. What is the culture you're trying to do? What are those behaviors? Go find people doing them and recognize them for it over and over and over until you, and then after 12-week period, if that individual still behaves in a certain way, And I've done some courageous conversations throughout this process of saying, hey, every single session, here's the behaviors that I saw that you were doing that were good. I want to appreciate you for those. Here's some violations that you did. How about between now and next week, we work on those 3. And then I start honing in on those 3. And every time I'm just talking about those 3. And then maybe they become 2. And then maybe it's salvageable. Unfortunately, there are situations where they're not. And after that 12-week period, unfortunately, we have to part ways because they might not be a fit for me. They might not be a fit for my culture. Sometimes they might just be redeployed somewhere else. But if it's a value that's critical, like integrity, for example, I wouldn't even recommend them to a different department. I would say that person just can't work for the culture that we're trying to create. But if it's something around, just if they're not really violating a behavior, but more it's a value, but maybe there's a behavior that we could work on. I will tell this, other department, hey, this person is not a fit for my department. They might be a fit for yours. Here's what I was working on. If you accept this person, here's the good things I've discovered. Here's the things I've been working on. I failed at working on them. It's on me. I tried and my approach didn't get through. So if you take on this person, know that this is something that you're going to have to work on if you want this culture in your area. And that's usually what I've done. Unfortunately, if they're an ego in their head or a legend in their head, then it doesn't matter how much I do. They're unwilling to not be the hero. They can't really stay with me.
Yeah, it's very hard for people to change their stripes. And again, I think it really starts in the hiring process. I would much rather hire someone who demonstrates the right behaviors and values because I feel like the other things can easily be taught.
100%.
Right? As long as they have the basic foundation, obviously, you're not going to throw someone into an engineering role that doesn't have any kind of engineering skills or background. But again, I would much prefer someone with the right behaviors, the right values, because, I can teach Lean, I can teach Six Sigma, I can teach control charts and process maps. I mean, all that's not that hard to learn. Having the right behaviors is the toughest part, which brings me to the second scenario in our last minute here. Someone who is has all the right behaviors and values, but is a poor performance person. What do you do with them?
That's a tough one. Because I feel like that is actually more salvageable than the first scenario, because that one, the technical, it almost feels like they have the leadership skills but don't have the technical competency. And that one I think is just I usually would assign like a preceptor to that person to kind of hold their hand through the process with maybe 2 standard work observations per week of just like making sure that they're hitting certain technical competencies. Because
the other thought on that is, are they, in the book Good to Great, they talked about being on the bus and then being in the right seat on the bus. Are they in the right job?
Yeah.
Right. They may move to a different job and then flourish because of a certain set of passions they have or competencies that they have. They're just in the wrong position. They're on the wrong seat. So as a leader, and I've seen that happen where people move to a different role and all of a sudden they just blossom. Well,
I have a question for you though before we.
Well, we're about out of time, so be quick.
Okay. What happens in your situation if you're trying to create this culture and people are violating this and you're trying to hold them accountable, but your boss doesn't see it that way?
That's a whole nother episode. So I think we should table that for a future discussion because we're out of time. But yeah, no, I know. And that just goes to show the importance of having everybody in the chain of command be on board with this.
Yeah.
Critically important.
All right. Well, we'll come back to that question in the next in an upcoming episode, but I think that's a critical one because a lot of people face that.
All right. Very good. Well, hey, good talking to you, Mohamed, and we'll see you next week.
Sounds good, John. Take care.
As we draw the curtains on another fascinating episode, we wanted to express our gratitude for joining us on this enlightening journey. If you're hungry for more captivating and thought-provoking discussions with John Dyer and Dr. Mohamed Saleh, hit that subscribe button to ensure you don't miss a beat. Until next week, keep exploring, stay inquisitive, and stay inspired. See you on the next Behind the Curtain adventure.